This is Fuzzy Road to Health, and I'm Fuzzy D. Today we're going to be talking about sugar addiction, what it does to you, how you can heal from it, and a few other little things here and there. Let's get started. So one of the first things that I want to mention is that, and I'll pop some pictures up to illustrate this. So it was discovered, I'm not sure exactly how long ago, but there were some studies done on the brain, and they discovered that sugar actually affects the exact same part of the brain that cocaine does, as well as morphine and methamphetamines, that kind of thing. And they've definitely linked it to serious addiction. As of 2021, I believe, the average American eats about 140 pounds of sugar a year. Now, when I say average American, that covers Canadians as well. They're about the same as the US when it comes to food consumptions. We basically follow the same dietary guidelines. Now, if you have looked on ingredients lately, on virtually any food you pull off the shelf, you'll see that there is not just sugar added, but fructose. Now, fructose specifically is really bad. So if you take a look at this picture right here, you'll see that sugar shows this effect on parts of the brain, but fructose has more effect on the brain. So you'll see on the left is sugar and on the right is fructose. And this is precisely why it's used so often. So I want to show you an article here on the web, and then I'm going to read some quotes from it. So this is on brainmd.com. So the title of this article is "What Do Sugar and Cocaine Have in Common?" So I'm going to read you some quotes here. Quote, "Eating sugary foods makes people hungry and tired and causes them to gain weight. Refined sugar is void of minerals needed for enzymes, can cause mineral deficiencies, interferes with the actions of calcium and magnesium, increases inflammation, increases erratic brain cell firing, and has been implicated in aggression. Additionally, sugar consumption has been associated with depression, ADHD, and hyperactivity, increased triglycerides, lower HDL, and higher LDL cholesterol. It also feeds cancer cells. Brain imaging studies showed sugar causes increased slow brain waves, and a study at UCLA showed that sugar alters learning and memory." Now, I personally know someone who suffered from ADHD pretty severely, and they're on the carnivore diet, which reversed that issue for them. But if they touch anything with sugar in it, whether it's refined sugar or even something natural like berries or watermelon or something, that ADHD comes back with a vengeance and can last for a couple of days. So I've seen the results of this information, and it's not pretty. So the next quote here: "In the 1970s, a mathematician by the name of Howard Moskowitz discovered that the perfect combination of sugar, salt, and fat would optimize the human brain's pleasure experience. He coined it the bliss point. Fast forward a few decades, and we now know that triggering the bliss point not only increases sensory experiences like taste and texture, but also activates a deep area in the brain called the nucleus accumbens, which is associated with motivation and pleasure. The nucleus accumbens is the same part of the brain that is activated by certain drugs such as cocaine, methamphetamines, nicotine, and morphine. In other words, the job of food designers is to create foods that hook your brain just like addictive drugs." End quote. So basically, the food companies are essentially drug dealers, and they dose their foods in such a way to keep us addicted. And there are a lot of organizations out there and large corporations who have a vested interest in seeing us continue to get sick, require doctors, require ongoing medications and treatment. Now, I'm not going to get into more specifics on that. I've got other videos you can look at for that. I do have to be careful of exactly what I say on YouTube if I don't want to get my channel struck. Here's another quote from the article. Quote, "Within a short time, usually several days of eliminating sugar, many amazing things began to happen in your body. Your hormones begin to regulate. Your hunger satiation signals normalize. You begin to enjoy the taste of real, unprocessed foods. Fruit tastes sweeter and vegetable more flavorful. And by eliminating sugar, which contributes to lack of focus and inattention, you have a greater ability to focus on making the healthiest eating choices." End quote. Now, of course, as carnivores, we're not going to be eating fruits or vegetables, so that isn't really a concern, but I've certainly noticed in my own journey that flavors in meat that I never noticed before are much more prevalent. After I eliminated the last of the seasonings I was using, over a period of a few more days, I noticed even more. Flavors that I just had no idea actually existed until what was blocking them was removed. I'll pop up a couple more pictures for you to see of sugar or addicted brains versus hard drug addiction, just to kind of further illustrate what they were talking about in this article. And here's another one that shows you obesity versus cocaine versus alcoholic brain scan. So one of the things that is quite common for carnivores or any other addict that's in recovery is to trade one addiction for another. And this is something that we don't want to do. It's something that's been a big struggle for me, and it's been a big struggle for many people in the carnivore community that I've talked to. So something else that they've proven scientifically is that over time of consuming sugar or these other drugs, basically any type of addiction actually changes the brain, and the damage can be long-term or even permanent, provided that you don't abstain from using these things. So they've shown that if you completely eliminate them from your diet, your brain will recover. It may take time. Nerve tissue of any kind takes a long time to heal, but it will heal. Usually they see significant changes after about 12 to 14 months, either direction, either using or abstaining. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about kind of the mechanism of why sugar causes weight gain, because it's not actually just about the calories. I mean, certainly calories are a factor. Now, when you're on carnivore, calories are much less of a factor. But when you're eating like the standard American diet, so then the calories become much more of an issue because they're empty calories. They're not doing anything to your body other than bad things. So one of the main mechanisms is when you eat sugar, that of course stimulates insulin. And as soon as your insulin rises above a certain point in your body, basically what's used to process the real nutrients in your system, the nutrients that are actually beneficial for you, any insulin in your system beyond that signals your body to store fat. If you're eating those excess calories and excess sugars, your body has kind of been trained over thousands of years to try and store all that energy, thinking that, well, all this excess eating must mean that starvation is coming. That's how your body interprets it. When you're consuming sugar, that excess insulin will signal it to store all the excess energy as fat. If you're trying to gain weight, well, that might be helpful, but if you're trying to lose weight or maintain your weight, that's definitely not a good thing. And this doesn't just apply to sugar, it applies to anything that tastes sweet. And I know this from personal experience. I just recently was having an issue with starting to gain a little bit of weight from day to day. I'd lose a little bit and then I'd gain a little bit more, and I'd lose a little bit of that, but gain a little bit more. So I was slowly gaining a pound or two over a couple of weeks, and it was really frustrating. Now, if I go out and do a bunch of exercise unexpectedly, yes, I'm going to gain weight because I'm increasing muscle density. Anybody who's seen my other videos knows that I was bedridden for about 10 years, in a wheelchair before that. So my muscles atrophied really bad. So for me, a little bit of exercise and my muscles, they start strengthening quite quickly. Now, unfortunately, because of issues with my back, I can't do a lot of exercise, but sometimes I can, or sometimes it's necessary because of something I have to get done. I usually suffer for it for a day or two afterwards, but sometimes it just has to be done. Now, I actually did have my MRI yesterday, so hopefully I'll be getting in to see the surgeon soon, and then all that's going to change. Once I'm healed up from surgery, I can go back to the gym and work out like a maniac like I used to. So I'm going to show you another chart here that it follows the use of sugar, processed foods, reduction in dietary fat, and the rise in obesity and severe obesity. So as you can see, looking at the chart here, the rise is virtually identical. Once those dietary changes were kind of made the law of the land, so to speak, and everybody started listening to the propaganda, then we started seeing everybody get sick. There are some, if you go and do some research, there's some other charts that you'll find that'll show the same thing with other processed foods and grains and, you know, all of this other stuff that was put to us in the new guideline, which I think was officially adopted in 1979 or 1980, something like that. One of the reasons that I'm making this video today is I've had a lot of discussion on this topic within the carnivore community over the last couple of weeks. And then with my recent experience with this weight gain that I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, what I tracked that down to is actually my mouthwash. So the mouthwash I was using, it was like a kind of an herbal-based natural mouthwash, no alcohol or anything in it. But what I discovered is that it actually had some artificial sweeteners in it, and I didn't realize it because it's got some other really strong flavors, like it's got clove, and it's also got cinnamon, and there's a couple other things in there. I think tea tree oil as well. They're all really strong flavors, so they put in this artificial sugar to make it more pleasant to use. So even though I of course don't consume it, just rinsing my mouth out with it was causing this issue with my weight loss. So as soon as I stopped using it, the next day I started losing weight again. It's just a fact of life. It's the way our body works. So as soon as something sweet enters our mouth, it automatically signals our pancreas to produce insulin, and that production of insulin, that's more than what we need for the nutrients we absorb, immediately signals the body to store fat. So if you're going to be a successful carnivore, you need to be able to cut out all of the sugar. And there are sugar in sources that you may not be familiar with. Milk, for instance. Milk is full of lactose. And not only is it full of lactose, it also contains an ingredient that's similar in how it affects the brain as opioids. Now, nature does this so that the calf will keep coming back and drinking as much as it can, because that calf, in about a year's time, needs to put on about 500 pounds. So that's the reason that it's in there. Now, when you do things like make cheese or ice cream or yogurt, then that opioid that's in it gets concentrated, just like taking poppies or certain types of poppies and turning them into opium. Okay? So it's concentrating that opiate within the milk. It's also concentrating those milk solids that contain the lactose, and lactose is basically a type of sugar, so it affects the body in the same way. So I know a lot of carnivores like to have coffee with heavy cream, or they'll have cheese on their patties, their ground beef patties, that kind of thing. Sure, I guess you can do that. It is an animal product, so it's not going to do other harm. But if you're trying to lose weight, or you're trying to maintain weight, and you're having issues, it's probably because of the milk products that you're eating. Now, some dairy products may have less of an effect, ones that are fermented, for instance. But fermentation can cause issues for people that have sensitivities. I know I occasionally will use some kefir if I'm making like a carnivore mayonnaise. Now I used to make a butter-based mayonnaise, but since I found out this new information, I'll now be making my carnivore mayonnaise with tallow or lard. But the reason I use a tiny bit of kefir is because of the bacteria that it contains, which will ferment the mayonnaise and allow it to be stored in the fridge for months instead of just a few days. That's not something that I would use very often. It would just be as an occasional condiment, or if I'm eating something that's really, really dry and needs a little extra fat, and I want, kind of more of a condiment type thing rather than just adding more fat, I might use a little bit of that. I don't actually have any at the moment, and I'm probably not going to make any for a while. If you found this video useful, I encourage you to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our future videos coming out. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I always appreciate you coming. We'll see you on the next video. Bye for now.